Welcome to the Goddess Conference Conversations. In this space, we will connect with interesting personalities, presenters and artists from our international community and chat about the upcoming conference's topics and themes.
Hey everyone, today I've got the absolutely amazing Katinka with us. Katinka, please could you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, thank you so much for watching. My name is Katinka Soetens. I am, together with Marion, co-organizers of the Goddess Conference, which is of course a massive event that involves many people, not just the two of us. And I also hold the Priestess of Rhiannon training here in Avalon and in other countries in Europe, which is really how to walk the path of love based on both Avalonian, Celtic and Tantric traditions.
What is healing for you, Katinka?
That's an interesting question to launch into. Healing, I think, has many different meanings for different people. For me, it has to do with integration, with wholeness. I am actually very grateful for conventional medicine, but I'm also holistically trained. And so there's something here around the integration of all sorts of forms of healing in your life when you need them. And this ongoing journey of really returning to who we really are in the fullness of our being. And that requires the calling home, as I call it, calling home to the heart, loving home to the heart, parts of ourselves that are either in distortion, or that we have denied, that we have disowned, or that are ruling us when they don't actually need to rule us. So for me, healing has really different layers to it. And I'm fortunate enough to really, at this time, not be in physical need for physical healing. So my focus at the moment is more on the emotional, spiritual, and mental side of healing.
Do you consider yourself a healer?
No, I don't consider myself a healer as such. I think healer is a particular term, like a label or a qualification. And I don't really think of myself like that. If I have one of these labels, then it's a priestess of the goddess, priestess of the gods of the ancient world. And so really, for me, healing is something that I can facilitate, or I can help people find their own ways of healing, or I can do things that are healing as a priestess, whether that is in sessions or in a relationship counseling or in the teachings in the Priestess of Rhiannon training. I mean, in the second year, there is an element or a segment that is about embodied healing. So I do know how to work with energetic healing, but I don't consider myself a healer. I think there's something here around the empowerment of other people to heal themselves, whatever that means. Doesn't mean that they might not need help with that. We all need help with that at times. But so for me, there is this place, I don't know, might be a little resistance in me. I don't know, I'll have to have a think about that. But yeah, so that would be my answer. No, I don't really consider myself a healer.
How is your spiritual path connected to healing?
Right, so again, I would come back to this word integration. My spiritual path has been about awareness, really, consciousness. For me, that is what a true spiritual path in whatever form is about. And for me, Goddess is about that, really becoming aware of your patterns, of your shadows in particular. So in the Wheel of Rhiannon, which is the Wheel of Initiation, there are these shadow forms of the 9 great archetypes of our lives and of her wheel. And it is a form, it's a frame to look at something through. So the recognition, the becoming aware of shadow parts of ourselves that that rule us, that influence our behavior, that have all sorts of forms of manifesting in our thoughts and in our actions. That for me really is a deep place of healing, to become aware and then to do something about it. It's all very well being just, oh, now I know about this, and then do nothing with that. So integration for me means that you actually really own these parts and are on it, so that you can catch the behavior, do the healing work that is needed, so that they no longer have to be so in the foreground. And of course, these places come from survival patterns that we've all developed. So it is with compassion that this integration needs to happen. Compassion to yourself and compassion to others. So yeah, it's an ongoing journey. And for me, this is the core place of the kind of healing that I work with, which is not so much physical ailments. It's more the other sides of healing.
Do you have a connection to a specific goddess of healing?
Well, my deity of my heart is Rhiannon, who is a Celtic goddess of love. So it is her path of love really that informs the healing in my own life, and also through the teachings I offer and her work that we are bringing out into the world, that healing manifests as love, which for me is one of the most beautiful ways of working with Goddess, really. She is love. She has many different forms. I absolutely love that. So I also have different other goddesses that I have strong connection to, or who have called me, or who I have initiated to as priestess, and also some gods. So it's not just one deity, but the main one is Rhiannon. And then this year in the conference, I am holding and working with Isolde as a very ancient triple goddess, Celtic triple goddess, who has survived in this little echo in some mythology that is actually much more recent. But she's clearly a goddess both from Ireland, Brittany, and Cornwall. And as Cornwall is one of my heartlands, I love working with her, and she is very much about healing the woundings of love and healing through physical healing, the medicine of plants, the medicine of touch. So I love having that connection this year and feeling deeper into that. I'm not finished with that, so I can't give a definitive answer around that yet. But so for this year, the goddess of healing I am connecting to is also Isolde.
Is there a specific healing journey in which the goddess and spirituality played a role? And would you be comfortable enough to share the story with us today?
It's good that you asked that second part of the question, because there's part of this journey that I'm not comfortable with sharing, and I'm holding the vulnerable place of myself in not opening up about that on, social media, because that place in me has felt very attacked. And so I would say that Goddess has been really a red thread through my life in a wounding around belonging or separation. I have had the great fortune of having a beautiful, loving childhood and great circles of friends, community, wherever I've lived in my life, really. But I've also experienced the opposite of that. And so the focusing in on where the places in myself are that go into a defensive pattern. I can be reactive and defensive, probably like everybody else, but that's definitely part of my shadow side. And so to really notice that goddess, and particularly Rhiannon as great goddess of both endurance, sovereignty, and love, has helped me to soften around the defensive mechanisms that I have around that vulnerability in myself, and to grow into actually expanding into the bigger picture. So instead of going into an immediate reactive defense, anger, dropping into the sadness that is or the disempowerment that sits underneath that. I'm seeing the bigger picture that is playing, or choosing to take a breath and expand into the bigger picture. So for me, this has been a journey that's played out in relationships, excuse me, in community, and in the places where she has challenged me, because part of this defensive mechanism in me is also that I want things on my terms. And so the role of Rhiannon really has been to not give me what I want, or to not have things resolved in the way that I would really like them to, and to have to be with that, to stay with that, to feel the places in myself that are really real. What is real in the now? One of her guiding questions. And what would love do? The directive to move into a goddess-centered way of living, because for me that's really what being a priestess is about, that we operate from that complete centered into goddess place, and not from these survival patterns and shadow behaviors that we all have.
Have you experienced the healing energy of Avalon? And if so, how would you describe it, Katinka?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. And I'm going to say no to that. For me, Avalon is not specifically a healing place. It has been a place of inspiration and a place of reclaiming, which in itself, of course, can be healing. No, for me, there are other places that are far more healing, where I experience healing as a field of reality, or where I feel that opening into myself, because it's a very personal thing, of course. So for example, Cornwall for me is a far more healing place. And when I arrived there 40 years ago, this really was a place where healing happened for me, and where my connection to the land and to the Celtic spirituality and goddess in particular really took a next step up. You know, the heat was turned up, the volume was turned up there. So for me, Avalon has been part of a collective coming together and remembering and reclaiming something, and then take that inspiration out again, which I guess you could call healing, but not healing in the kind of way that we're talking about healing today.
Has your time in Avalon inspired or adjusted or shifted your healing journey in any way?
It has challenged my healing journey. And I think there's something here around this separation wounding. That's one of the main woundings I think we all humans in the modern world carry, really, in one form or the other, which has to do with our disconnection to the natural world, really, and to goddess. So goddess consciousness, definitely, and the different forms of the Celtic goddesses associated with Avalon, that has been really an amazing journey to have, and to be in connection to a community here that is really in the whole town. There's so many different strands, so many different streams of spirituality. I love that. I think that's very unique. I don't think that is easy to find in many other places, where there's really such a diversity. And at the same time, that brings its own challenge, because the separation wounding that we have, and that is brought up, which Avalon Glastonbury does magnify things like this. You know, when that's brought up, that is hugely painful and extra challenging, because it echoes into the spiritual parts of our own being, and the spiritual wounding of separation, which of course go back many lifetimes, many different forms, and slightly blah, 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 really. I mean, that's on the one hand very interesting, and on the other hand, it's like, let's stay actually in this life and see what's going on. And then if you're looking at behavior-based forms of being, then for me, Avalon is actually more challenging than healing.
Do you think that there's a healing that takes place through the way that it challenges people?
It can do. and it can also be deeply rewounding or traumatizing for the first time. So it can do both, really. And I think to hold your core while living here, when that is spinning, which I've seen it do many, many, many times now, that takes a centeredness and a courage and really a commitment to your spiritual path from whatever diverse place that comes. Yeah, and perhaps that is a metalling, that is a forging of the metal of your spirit. So I can see in the bigger picture how that can be healing, but I think in the reality of life, in the normalness of life, it can also be wounding.
Do you feel healing is a necessary process that we face after we've experienced wounding and trauma, or do you perceive it as an ongoing practice to nurture in your life as you face the world in a more connected way?
I think it's both. So if we look at the amazing body, the best friend of our soul that we all have, yeah, when we have physical injury or disease, illness, then every cell of our body has this extraordinary capacity to heal. I mean, it is a miracle. It really is a magic. If you have a cut and it heals itself, you don't have to do anything for it. You don't even have to be aware of it. I mean, you might stick a plaster around it, but you don't have to do anything. It's extraordinary when you think about it. And I think healing on the other levels that we're talking about has a similar capacity, really. So I think sometimes a healing crisis is what happens in all our lives, and it is an initiation. It's a deep initiation. Like grief is one of the deep gateways of love, really, in the heart. And so a healing crisis is part of the opportunity to really place your focus around something that might need healing, to give it your attention when you have been ignoring it, or to become aware, again, becoming aware, becoming conscious of something that may be playing in you, or really that you've been walking with for a very long time, that's asking to be loved home to the heart or healed in that way, no longer needing to be rescued. You have actually brought it home. So yes, I think actually these healing crises in the emotional and spiritual and mental planes are actually important initiations, in the same way that physical healing crises can be important, really important initiations and change makers in our life. And then when we've had those healing crises, it's very easy to forget about them and to say, okay, that was in this little box, in this little compartment. I don't have to do anything about that anymore, or at least that's easy for me. And so I think then the commitment to yourself is this ongoing journey of integration of consciousness around the healing and the ripples of that, because it's usually never just one thing. There are usually all these tendrils, all these different forms in which our woundings and our healing crises manifest.
So true. Which wounds do you feel are the hardest to heal from in your experience, and how did you support such healing in your life?
Yeah, I think the hardest wounds, really, if you have to give them a name, it would be separation wounding for me, really, which can manifest in so many different ways and have so many patterns of defenses or survival mechanisms that we build around them. Really from disassociation to shielding, really the full range of what we might loosely call the window of tolerance and the trauma responses around that. And so there are, of course, many different ways in which this separation wounding can manifest. Yeah, it can manifest as having experienced not being loved, not being accepted, not being enough, of not belonging, of not being safe. There are so many different ways in which this implants quite in our youth, really, and then continue to ripple in our lives. I think as a society, as a Western culture and society, Europeans particularly have this disconnection from the sacred source of the feminine, of the goddess, disconnection of the land as sacred, disconnection of the elemental beings as being this extraordinary interconnective place of being in the world. And we have exported that all over the world in our colonialistic taker mentality and actions over the last centuries. And so really we're looking at something that is quite global now, this disconnection, wounding of separation. And so part of the healing journey here is this remembering here in Avalon and here in the Goddess Conference, remembering the sacred source of the divine feminine, of goddess, remembering your interconnectivity to all of life, to the kinship that the Celts held, the Celtic people held at the core of their societies, kinship to the land, to each other, and the honorable ways of being in our behavior, in our lived actions, coming from that place. So yeah, I would say that is the massive main wounding that certainly in the West we are all walking with. I think that is what the collective most needs to heal from, really. And I think Gaia is in what is going on in the world with climate crisis is going to bring this to the foreground of all our awareness. It's going to kind of put us as humans in our place of our insignificance, which I think is one of the places of the antidote to the human ego, which in itself is not actually a bad thing, but where we are ruled by our egos, our ideas of importance. We, in the magnificence of the vastness of everything else, which when we lived in conditions where there was, for example, no street light, you could have this on a clear night, just the vastness of the stars. Or when we were seafarers, without all the sort of massive boats and vessels, whatever, we actually in the elements, your utter insignificance on the vastness of the ocean. Or when in the landscape of the mountains, where, if you are not in community, if you're not belonging to a tribe who looks after you, if something happens, you're dead, basically. You're nothing. This we have lost in our comfortable ways of living, which, I love my comfortable ways of living, don't get me wrong. But so there is this whole thing where we need to reconnect to that actually we're not the most important thing. We are a part of everything. I think this is the main place of healing at this time in our world.
Very well said. Why is the archetypal maiden aspect of goddess associated with healing for you?
The maiden goddess is the place of youth, of course, on the great wheel of initiation, but she's also the goddess of renewal. And at this time of the year, in bulk time, she is rising in the land, and it is exciting. Even when things are still cold and wet and grey, there are these little signs of life is starting again, renewal. And renewal is, of course, part of our bodies. No matter what age we are, our cells are still renewing. Every time that we are, different organs have a different rhythm in that. But there she is, literally within our cells, renewing from the inside out. And our hearts have a capacity to renew, to love again, to dare to open again. So for me, this aspect of renewal is very much part of the maiden aspect of the goddess. On the wheel of Rhiannon, she is the wild maiden and the wild youth. And this is really, this wild element is our absolute interconnectivity with the natural world, with the elemental beings. And the magic of that, the absolute magic of feeling your oneness, your non-separation from the different aspects of the natural world. And so this this part of the Maiden Goddess is like a golden thread. We are working in the Goddess Conference with the golden thread of the Goddess that manifests from her into us and then weaves through us into all of life and into all our connections, all our relationships. So this is the beautiful golden thread of the Maiden Goddess that we get to work with, this capacity to renew, this capacity to love, this capacity to try again, to try something new despite whatever and because of whatever. There is this absolutely gorgeous, hopeful, alive energy that is the Maiden Goddess, and that is the healing that we therefore associated with the Maiden archetype this year.
If you could send a healing blessing to all of the community of the Goddess Conference celebrating the Goddess of Healing this year, what would it be?
It would be to be love in action. The blessing of the Goddess as love in you and through you into your life, into all your relationships, into your connection to the world, to nature, to all the places of conflict. It's so hard to witness the places of conflict, both within ourselves, in our relationships, and in the world at large. And so I think to be the blessing of love, may you know it within you, may you feel her love within you, holding the vulnerable places of you, the wounded places of you, so that you can be love in action in the world and in your life and for yourself, your self-love. Be guided by her compass question, really, her compass of what would love do in this moment. That would be my wish for you all.
What a beautiful, beautiful blessing. Katinka, thank you so much for your time, and on behalf of everyone that watches and listens, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your love, and your insights with us. We can't wait to see you at the conference.
Oh, thank you so much, Ria. And yes, I can't wait to see you all at the conference. Come and join us for the Maiden Year Goddess of Healing. And thank you so much for giving me your time today.
This interview and chat was conducted by 𝗬𝗓𝗏 for the Glastonbury Goddess Conference. Please check out our website to discover more about our community and our annual gathering in Glastonbury, Avalon. Join us this year for the 29th Glastonbury Goddess Conference, a joyful gathering of goddess-loving people, a 6 days in-person event in Glastonbury, Avalon, running from Tuesday 30th July to Sunday 4th August 2024, with the fringe events starting from Sunday 28th July. This year the theme is the Goddess of Healing. It's our maiden year, the first year of a new 5-year cycle. International presenters, transformative workshops and experiences, deep ceremonies on the sacred land of Avalon, community, art, fun, and love for Goddess. Let your healing journey begin this year. Join us for the Glastonbury Goddess Conference, Goddess of Healing. There are so many options to participate: full conference tickets, weekend tickets, day tickets. Find what suits you best and get your ticket now at goddessconference.com.